Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the amazing World Around team, to Beatrice, Satomi, Eric Chen for the invitation. It's such a pleasure to be here to listen and meditate on all of the amazing work we've seen today. My name is Mae-ling Lokko, and as a designer, educator, and artist, I've been interested in the role of intersectoral material life cycles, how we might design materials that flow between the field, the plate, as well as the building. For over a decade, this has meant working with husks, stalks, stems, shells, rinds, and peels from over 15 plant families, materials that are largely left behind once the holy grail of the plant, the supple fruit, has been plucked. Today, I'd like to go back to the very beginning and share with you the story of a very frazzled plant that I started this journey with, the dear coconut. Over the years, I still continue to marvel at the wonders of this material. It's a protective material skin that takes the brunt of the coastal environment. Its relentless sun, the wind, salty, humid air, and makes do with the nutrients from sort of a very sandy soil with poor nutrients, all the while nurturing and keeping cool the most beautiful, luscious embryo in terms of the coconut copra and water. As a species, we've been friends with coconuts for a very long time, grown across 89 tropical countries by farmers who make less than $1 a day. They've been used as a high-quality food, fiber, and filter. As a portable source of food and water, coconuts have played a critical role in helping us voyage and establish trade routes throughout the humid tropics and beyond. In Ghana and the Philippines, where I'm from, every part of the coconut has been matched throughout its life to some form of ecological or human use. Basically, as my mom, who's in the audience tonight, likes to tell me, May, it doesn't matter what the question is, coconut is the answer. And it seems in the last 2 decades, the world has caught on to my mom's way of thinking. Fueled by global marketing campaigns and health trends, the coconut and its primary derivatives, oil, butter, milk, sugar, water, have become elevated to superfood or supercrop status. For today's coconut-producing territories, the higher yields of coconut farms to meet this rising demand boom is what one may call a party trick, a short-lived productive phase that distracts us from the larger, relentless cycle of extraction and cumulative depletion happening elsewhere on the planet. More critically, the underbelly of this multi-billion-dollar food and cosmetic industry is the generation of large quantities of surplus husks by farms and urban roadsides. Given the husk presents a huge land compaction problem in landfills, this dense, strong material is illegal to dump in municipal waste systems and are instead burnt in open air. One might argue that coconut husks are part of a broader material residue family, which taken together might be arguably the world's most undervalued material resource stream. In comparison to the big four we see on the left, sugar, corn, rice, and wheat, which comprise over half of everything that we grow on the planet to feed ourselves, coconuts in the middle are not necessarily the most widely available resource or produced one, but they are made of something incredibly unique. A lot of the structural stuff, lignins, and much less of the sugar stuff, cellulose. Basically, a Peloton veteran crop on a low-carb diet. And so it's been used on everything from geotextiles to roofing sheets. The sheer scale of agricultural waste available to us today is astounding. 4 years ago, we grew close to 10 billion tons of crops to feed ourselves. And of that 10 billion, we know that about 40% is actually wasted, often degraded, prematurely combusted on the field, or lost somewhere between the farm gate and our landfill. And just to get a sense of this scale, I'd like us to picture the largest mammal on the planet, the blue whale, which is roughly the equivalent of 2,200 humans. I did the math. And then imagine a fleet of 300,000 of these blue whales. This is a material resource stream passing us by each year. So what does 300,000 blue whales worth of biomass mean in the context of climate change and planetary carbon dynamics? Well, between the mid-18th century and today, we have increasingly tapped into the fossilized remains of plants and animals as the backbone of our energy and built infrastructure, as well as a high-carbon mineral-built environment. And this has resulted in taking carbon stored in our land and dispersing it in our atmosphere. A foundational part of my work, which looks at using these younger biomass, has been to take a step back and understand the value framework that we are participating in. Everything that we grow today or make are sort of extracted from our land or ecology and transformed through human labor systems and industrial production. That valuable product is then sold to consumers with the largest share of that value accumulating in ownership structures, be it the state in terms of socialism or the corporation in terms of capitalism. And this system generates a ton of material waste pollutants, materials in the wrong place and time. Throughout this system, there are many forms of what we call alienated value. Value that has been extracted impatiently from the top down and that thrive on the alienation of actors from their generation systems. And this can take the shape of many different things. It could be land that is used year after year for monoculture agriculture, forced labor systems on the farm or the factory, working in toxic environments that are vulnerable and dependent on this cycle. It could be us consumers who have no idea what and who is affected by our consumption choices or what goes into our body. Or it could be materials that cannot return to their homes at rates and concentrations that do not do harm to the new environments that they find themselves in. I've also become cognizant of this position of the architect or the designer in that orange spot in between the owners and the consumers. Through the way we design buildings and specify materials, we are a core driver in this extraction cycle today. And as we enter this sort of proposed new dawn in terms of carbon pool replenishment, I've become interested in how we might be able to explore new roles at the bottom half of this system. And this means working with a new material inventory, some of which are contaminated, identifying new actors to collaborate with, and ultimately how to return these materials back to their generation mechanisms, our land and our labor systems. Taking the coconut husk as an example, there's a wide range of careers in the building for these materials as strong tensile fibers and moisture-loving pith. Relative to metals or mineral-based materials that might be good at doing very specific things, the possibilities for biomass span over 1,000 different uses. Studying the husk materials on its own, there's a continuum of uses from the left to the right. On the left, the coconut fibers can actually be pressed using its own pith to serve as a glue to generate non-toxic, low-carbon, medium to high-density fiberboards, things that can replace plywood and MDF. And given their high porosity, they can also be used for humidity control and moisture retention. Even at the end of their lives, when they're pyrolyzed into activated carbon, they form one of the world's most efficient filters used for cleaning water and air. Even in the bowels of our urban sewage treatment systems, the global demand for activated coconut carbon is, as a high-performance filter, is keeping pace with the superfood applications each year. And here lies the predicament. Cognizant that the ultimate commodification of every single part of a plant over its life has historically led to even more intense systems of industrialized monocultures, including rice and sugar all over the world and corn in this country, there is a real need to explore how different parts of the plant can be used collaboratively, matched and proactively designed to support new paradigms for biodiversity. To account for seasonality and variance in coconut husk materials, emerging biobinders like soy, coconut pith, algae-based materials, fungi, can also reduce dependency on just one plant and open up new production methods for healthy, low-carbon practices. For biomasses like coconut with high percentages of lignin, the structural stuff, they can be pressed, causing a natural melting and cross-linking to give really strong boards close to that of oak. For biomass byproducts like corn that have much higher percentages of sugar, they can be fed to fungal mycelium that grows in our forests and over the course of 5 days grow into low-density insulative materials. Given the generosity of the skinny coconut tree that allows faster-growing plants, including corn, to grow below it, we can also design and section the building material as a celebration of these plant relationships and seasonal capacities. This sort of Kit-Kat approach to reconstituted wood products celebrates the use of biomass fibers and non-toxic glues to generate breathable, healthy materials. And this is very much in contrast to a Botox approach that we see in our wood products, where we pump them with glues and coatings so they can't move or breathe and they don't age. As exterior walls and roofs, breathable coconut fiber boards allow the materials to show off their hygrothermal training in their first life when they're protecting the luscious coconut water. You can see on the right the sort of moisture flux over the day in the life of a coconut board. Through their porous matrices, pressed coconut husk materials can still sorb ambient humidity and buffer the climate in tropical environments. It is then this temporarily trapped moisture that takes on all the heat until it reaches saturation, where it produces an evaporative cooling effect. Lastly, as we begin to grapple with the issues of behavior of materials in our city, from high heat gain, impermeability to water, heavy metal leaching, agricultural byproducts like the pith may also have a critical role to play as part of green infrastructure. Here in Accra's last remaining public park, the coconut pith is used as a high retention soil media to slow down and store water runoff and provide a home for indigenous flora that can be used in urban bioswales to increase flood tolerance in the city. As a lever for generative justice, which I define as the bottom-up creation and circulation of value, design has a huge role to play in advocating for why high-value, longer-life materials captures the true potential of such materials relative to combustion and downcycling. It is also in expanding our business model and roles within a larger ecosystem. How might we collaborate with other actors, from farmers, emerging eco-manufacturing enterprises, or even building owners, to sort of translate existing and new forms of value being brought to the table? How do we make visible and reward actors for their participation in this growing green collar economy? And lastly, through all of this, how do bio-based building material economies support the equitable distribution of value back to its ecosystem to ensure the health of its generation sources? Ultimately, how do we design materials for soil health? And I'd like to end on what has been a powerful platform for me in art in shifting the deeply seated cultural and social barriers that face the reintegration and renormalization of these materials. While the technological aspects are well underway, the social and cultural work that needs to be done on the demand side is less so. In my art practice, I've often turned to spaces and sites of extraction as opportunities for reflexivity and release, beginning with the door of no return. I don't know if anyone's been to a slave fort, but this is sort of a very intense threshold that would have been the last view that an enslaved African would have seen before they boarded a ship. And it's an image of a threshold that is seared into my mind, or for anyone who's ever seen it. So relative to the stone and bricks of successive colonial empires, the Portuguese, Dutch, and British, and the view that looks out to the ocean, this piece, which looks at using the coastal ecology and materials like the coconut, frames the door of return, looking from a younger material on top to an aging material closer to the ground, eventually decomposing into pith. And here one is looking back at the coast, almost as if on a return vessel to examine a home once lost. As part of an exhibition at Reba on the Liverpool docks, which was a major part of the historical transatlantic trade, became a site for dock labor, and that has since been displaced by shipping containers. The space of the tunnel-like shipping container is recomposed again with microcomposites grown by over 150 volunteers from urban farms, schools, and volunteer groups. In this piece, Healing Meadow is the signal of land that has been once clear-cut and is now beginning to heal. And this celebrates in Hasselt in Belgium a range of work of grasses, non-woody plants, herbs, and fungi as part of systems that are helping to repair our ecosystem. An inverted drome of mycelium grown, this time sheltered by beech trees in a forest in Hasselt in the Netherlands, where honey mushrooms once thrived. So just as colonialism has seeded and capitalism has accelerated value extraction and inequity through the invention of the supercrop, through slavery, among many other things, radical material practices cannot be divorced from radical collaboration. Thank you.